God bless everybody today. It is January 26th of 2025. I have a ton of information I'd like to get through tonight. Current events, how they line up with biblical, and I'm just going to get right into it because there's just so much here. First thing I want to address, though, is this Turkish-backed takeover of Syria. Now, on my Paradigm 2030 chart, I've talked about this takeover or an invasion by Turkey into Syria approximately around January of 2025. And we're almost here at the end of January 2025 because we're at the 26th. There's a lot of events surrounding around the 25th of this month as we move forward. And I want to get into a lot of that as we move into the articles. The other thing I want to address, so one of the first things I'd like to address is this fall of Assad's regime in Syria. Now we saw Assad's regime fall in approximately 12 days. It started around November 27th and ended where Damascus fell and Assad fled around December 8th. Now, as you can see, the Turkish envoy has gone down. They're talking to the Syrian new leadership right now, and so we're seeing this connection between these two groups. Now, realize that the HTS and the Free Syrian armies were all Turkish backed. So at this point, Turkey owns Syria. He controls all the different groups that really run the country at this moment in time. And so we need to understand that Turkey probably has already completed his initial invasion of Turkey through proxies. Now, I had thought that this process would happen around January because that's when Alexander the Great actually went down into Syria and started to control that. But he did not get down into Lebanon until March, and that is an area that I believe we're going to see actually Turkey enter into Lebanon as we're watching this expansion of not only Turkey into Syria, but an expansion and a larger footprint of Israel going into Lebanon against Hezbollah. And that is going to get extremely harsh up in the southern portion of Lebanon as Israel starts to siege these areas. Now, they've learned a lot from what they had done for 15 months at Hamas, and I've looked at a number of statements from the Israeli military in general stating that they would not make these same mistakes, and I believe that it's going to be a much harsher campaign than it was down in Hamas. And because you have a 42-day ceasefire, which you're in the process of having with Hamas, and that has slowed down on the southern border in Palestine, we're starting to see a ramp up in the north with Hezbollah in Lebanon. So to break this all down, I'm going to put us into a text file, and I'm going to go through this step by step. Two areas on this map that I really want you to pay attention to are this area here, which would actually be the Battle of Carchemish. And I believe this battle will break out around May of 2025 as we go through this text file. I'm going to show you how this all works. The other area I'm concerned about is this area around Erbil. Now we have a green zone, U.S. troops have a green zone here, and we also have a regional capital of the Kurdistan people, which are the Medes in the history books or in the Bible. And so we need to watch this, and as you can start to see, Erdogan has been bombing this area and softening this up for some time. And what you're starting to see is you're starting to see all these demonstrations and call out for Turkey to slow down this campaign because they're doing a massive pressure on the northern border of Syria, as well as they are pushing the Kurds east. And this is extremely important because when this Free Syrian armies, the Turkish-backed Free Syrian armies, and the HTS pushed the Kurds to the east. They pushed them all the way to the Euphrates River, and I'm going to sort of show you that map and what happened there. So I put this text file together because there's just so much information I want to cover here, and I don't want to get off track too much. So let's go through the information. I'll show you some really cool calendar dates on the Jewish calendar that matter, and then we're going to go right into the events that are going to affect the Middle East, I believe, in the next few months. So the first thing I'd like to cover are some of the Jewish calendar dates that are affecting us in January. We first had on January 18th the Shemot. The children of Israel multiplied in Egypt, threatened by their growing numbers. Pharaoh enslaved them and orders the Hebrew midwives to basically kill all the male babies. They don't comply, and so what happens is Pharaoh commands his people to cast the Hebrew babies into the Nile. And this also connects us as we move into this potential 6-planet alignment, because we have the 6-planet alignment that's basically visible on January 21st to the 29th, and then I was concerned about this January 25th date below here, and I did a video on that, and I still believe it is the start of a chain of event that we're going to be seeing as we move forward. But the celestial event called the Planet Parade will occur during this period of January 21st through the 29th, and we will see Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune align in the sky, and this alignment offers a unique opportunity for you to go out and actually look at it. I'm not sure that all of them are visible by eye. You may have to use equipment to see all of them. But this is interesting how it wrapped around a number of dates as we move forward here, because I had talked about how on 25th of Tevet, which was January 25th, Alexander the Great met with the high priest after the Samaritans said that the Jews intended to betray him. Now there's a couple events around this January 25th date as we go forward here that I think is really affecting the Middle East, especially around Hamas and Hezbollah. You've got that Hamas front that's sort of shut down with the 42-day ceasefire where they're trying to get the hostages and stuff back. So Israel's deflected and moved most of their attention to the northern front, which is Hezbollah and possibly Iran. So there is a lot going on here. So I think 25 Tevet is an interesting time, because what are we watching happen? We're starting to see a massive expansion of Israel into Lebanon, and we've also seen this event happen on the 26th, because the Lebanese security source told CNN on Friday that it had not received an official notice of the Israelis' plan to keep their forces in Lebanon beyond the 60-day ceasefire grace period. Until the November ceasefire agreement, both Israel and Hezbollah forces agreed to withdraw from southern Lebanon by January 26, or today, the end of the 60-day period stipulated in the deal. And so that isn't happening, okay guys? That's just not happening. Hezbollah warned on Thursday that if the Israeli military remained in Lebanon past Sunday, it would be considered a brazen breach of that agreement. So I'll quickly show you some of the articles so you can see where they are. You can go out and read up on these articles if you want, but I'm just showing you that there is this ceasefire, and that's interesting that it's going on around this time of the 25th of Tevet. And this is going to affect Hezbollah, and Turkey's watching this. Turkey's very interesting to know if Israel's doing expansion into Lebanon, because Turkey's been concerned that this is an expansion of Israel into God's footprint, okay? He doesn't want that to happen. So he's going to try to stop Israel from expanding. The problem is Turkey's expanding also, because now we see Turkey pretty much in control of Syria. And so you have Israel moving up through Lebanon, and you got Turkey moving to the border of Lebanon, and you're going to see these two clash, I believe, as we move forward. So this is what I mean. Have we already seen pretty much? Now, we haven't seen a full invasion by Turkish forces, but we have seen them basically do a coup on Assad, and now they control Syria without an invasion. That invasion, in my opinion, as we watch us go forward here, I believe will happen around March of this year. And that March date will be dictated by the expansion of both Israel and Turkey, and I believe we're going to see them meet somewhere in Lebanon around March. Another event that I wanted to bring to your attention, and I think is extremely important, because I believe that, in my opinion, I've said this a few times, that I believe Erdogan is representative of Muhammad, and that when he dies and gets buried and resurrected, then he will come back like an Allah, okay? Because Satan is controlling this Allah figure. But Muhammad is what I consider the white horseman of Revelation, which is Erdogan. Once he dies, then we move into an Antichrist phase. That's like an Allah phase, okay? The 27th of January is extremely important, because this is the 27th of Rajab. I hope I'm saying that right. This commemorates the night when the Prophet Muhammad was taken on a journey from Mecca to Jerusalem, and then he ascends into the heavens. Now, in my opinion, because I believe the Quran is perverted and usually is a negative reflection of what we're seeing in biblical scripture, I would interpret this, in my opinion, and I don't mean to overstep my bounds here, the Prophet Muhammad would take a journey from Mecca to Jerusalem because he's the white horseman, die, and then he would descend into the abyss, and then we would see a Allah come forth from that. Okay. This journey is said to have taken place when the prophet was experiencing hardship and pain after the deaths of his wife and the first Muslim. Okay, so this is an extremely important date for the Muslims. I'm not trying to berate it in any way. I'm just saying I believe it is the start of the process of Erdogan getting ready to go against the Israeli people and their nation. And if you think about it, in Alexander the Great's time, in the 25th of Tevet, he was warned that the Jews were intending to betray him. Well, what have you seen? We just saw this massive breakout in Lebanon by these Jewish forces. So the thing I think we should be watching here is, if the ceasefire holds in Hamas down in Palestine in that 42-day period of gap, they've got their second set of hostages back. They've had an issue because they did not return a civilian. So she's supposed to get returned on Friday. Right now they're not allowing the Gazan people to migrate back north until that hostage is released. I believe they have another hostage release on Saturday. So we'll see if this holds up, and that's allowed Israel to relax a little on the military front on the south. But on the north, they're pushing hard and they're expanding quickly. And this is going to throw a real wrench in this, because I believe this is going to cause a lot of outcry in the international community. This is going to cause outcry by Erdogan. Erdogan's watching the expansion of not only Israel saying that they're not going to leave Gaza until the Hamas is gone and they can reconstitute a new government there, so they're going to stay there, but they're also expanding in the north into Syria as well as into Lebanon, and Turkey's watching this expansion. Now, like I said, Turkey's expand pretty much and owns Syria now, and so you have these two nations that are basically going to clash in Lebanon soon, I believe. And the last Jewish date I have here is this January 28th date. I don't know if this affects the timeline, but it was on the calendar. I thought it was interesting timing around all these other events, and so I wanted to show you that this man had ejected the Sadducees from Sanhedrin, replacing them with another discipline or that was loyal to this Masana. I'm probably saying these all wrong. So just realize I try to give you all these different dates. Some of them aren't probably as beneficial as other. This one just seemed to be right around this area on the calendar, so I thought it might have more significance to somebody Jewish than myself, and you may get more out of it than that. I would have to do a little more research on this and see what this event actually, how that affected the Jews in the past. So the next thing I want to talk about as we move forward is we're going to look at the events on the Paradigm 2030 chart on the text file here, so that I can sort of walk through how and what I think is happening here. And there's some really cool connections as we move forward. So based on the Paradigm 2030 chart, these events should occur in the next 12 to 18 months. Now, if you go to my free Wix site at endofdayssurvival.com, and you go down the page just a little bit, you can find this 5th PDF. When you click on that, that will actually bring up the paradigm chart, and I'm using a text file based on this chart. So when you look at the chart, we're going to be around in this area here, so just realize that I'm not going to bring the chart up. I just want to show you where we are in the chart so you can understand where it applies to the text file. So what I did was I had to go through everything. I spent about 2 weeks sitting down, looking at the board, figuring out how these battle movements are going on in history, how they might affect us in the future based on Alexander the Great and Nebuchadnezzar's movements, and how they also apply to those kings of the past that reflect the modern day leaders or kings of today of Turkey, Israel, as well as the Kurdish leader that just got elected in, that they all reflect past to future in the exact amount of time that they were in the position, the years that they were in place, to today, the exact things occurring, the same position, same amount of years that they're in place. So we should be able to look at the kings of the past and reflect them to the kings of today. When you go to that Paradigm 2030 chart, these events are playing out right now. And this is what I mean. If all you have to know is your history. He gave you a Bible that built a history lesson in that told you this would reflect to latter days, and you can see that morphing, especially in Daniel. You go from Daniel 2 to Daniel 7, Daniel 8, into the end of the story. He's explaining to you the kingdoms and what's going to happen, and it's going to reflect a history lesson. It's that simple. So let's look at what he's explaining to us, at least in my opinion. We'll see how this plays out. Now, a lot of these events just occurred, so we're going to go back just to the time where Syria was overtaken by the Turkish-backed Syrian army and the HTS, and how they overthrew the Assad government in approximately 12 days between November 27th of 2024 and December 8th of 2024. Now, through this HTS and Turkish-backed Free Syrian Army, Turkish basically controls Syria at this point. He's had a ton of envoys down there. These were Turkish-backed groups. This was a coup against the Syrian government so that Turkey could expand the Ottoman footprint down into Syria, and then also position himself to where he could go down into Lebanon, into Palestine, and help those people, because Israel's not going to stop this campaign. So that's his goal, not mine. That's what he's getting ready to have happen. Another thing that happened here that's extremely important is we had a whole bunch of countries and nations get moved around in this power grab and in this vacuum. These Turkish-backed Free Syrian Army and HTS, when they took control of Syria, they forced basically the Russian armies out of both their air base and their sea base. And I noticed not only did Russia not get their base reapproved because their contract ran out, so they got to leave. I've noticed that they're starting to bring down Russian ships to retrieve a lot of their stuff that they're going to take up north and use in Ukraine right now, because they can't do anything with it down here now. They're pretty much pushed out of Syria. And this is interesting because they got pushed out of Syria, and so Russia's been pretty much expelled from Syria. And what have they done? They've aligned themselves with Iran. Now, this is extremely important, because if Russia and Iran are aligning here and they're being pushed out of Syria, then you have to explain to me how Rosh, which isn't in the Bible, is a Russian thing that's going to take on Israel here soon. Because if you look at it, Gog of Ezekiel 38 and 39 destroys Iran once the Kurds align with them. So that doesn't really line up really well when Russia's aligning with a nation that they're going to supposedly destroy here in the near future. That's what I mean. If you go look at the kingdoms of the history of the Jews, you realize that the seventh kingdom is the Ottomans, and that we're going into the eighth or beast kingdom as we move forward. And so it doesn't make any sense that Russia has a major play here. Now, are they going to be affected by the Middle East? Yes, because they're aligning with Iran. They're going to be shipping weapons down there. But Turkey is the real issue here. And if you look at Daniel 8, which no one's talking about, and I think that's extremely interesting, that we're watching the Kurds getting pummeled, which are the Medes, and that Turkey's going to force them to align with Iran and then go down and crush both these nations as Russia's aligning with Iran itself. It's not going to bode well for Russia or Iran as we move forward. So I think people will start to change their narrative on the Russian narrative, as well as I think that hopefully we're going to start to see people actually start talking about Daniel 8, because that has happened in the past, but it's going to reflect a future event that's getting ready to happen in 2025. So the Russian armies are being pushed out of both their air and sea bases. They're not going to be an effective force or have hardly anything left in Syria. Everything that they would have to do would be a penetration from Iran over Syrian airspace to Israel, or whatever they're going to do. The other thing that I think is extremely important here is that when these HTS and Turkish-backed Free Syrian armies took over Syria, they pushed the Kurds and the Medes east towards the Euphrates in Syria. So I don't know if you can see this well on the chart here, but I'm telling you, Turkey pretty much controls Syria. The SDF, which are the Kurds, now have been pushed completely out of this area. Okay, and this is the Euphrates River. So they've been pushed east completely out of that northwestern portion of Syria. And these areas here are all Turkish-backed Free Syrian armies. Okay, so just realize, and the area down here are all HTS-controlled Turkish-backed armies. Okay, so just realize that Turkey owns this, and that's what I'm saying. If this is the case, then I believe, as I said on the paradigm, that Turkey would do or have some kind of invasionary force pretty much in Syria by January of this year, and I think that's already occurred. Now, the other thing that is extremely important, that I'm going to start mentioning this, and I'm actually going to do a video about this. Along this Euphrates River, you have two hot spots. You have the Battle of Carchemish, which will lead to an absorption and takeover by the tomb of Suleiman Shah. This is so extremely important, and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of this tomb of Suleiman Shah, but this is one of the first sultans. I talked about how this tomb of Suleiman Shah was going to matter. It's a Turkish-owned tomb in Syria. They've moved 3 or 4 times, and now it's up around this area here. And when we go to those Free Syrian maps on Turkey military activities, you can see this is an extremely busy area right now. So let's try to blow this up a little bit. And you can see they're bombing around that Battle of Carchemish right here. And the tomb of Suleiman Shah is down here. So he's pushing the Kurds, which are along the Euphrates River, east further towards Erbil. That's extremely important. As you come out of this map, you realize that Erbil is over here. He's bombing that northern front to soften that up, because this is the Battle of Gaugamela. Okay, extremely important that these are all going to play out. Now, on my paradigm chart, I have this Battle of Carchemish. I haven't added it yet, but I'm getting ready to add it. Will happen actually around May of 2025, and there's an extremely important reason why. So this will be extremely important for Erdogan, because he's going to create a two-pronged attack on entire Lebanon in this process. Not only will he come down from Turkey down into Syria, which he basically owns all of this area now. Remember, the Kurds have been pushed all the way to the east here, so Turkey owns this whole area down into here. If you go into the Ottoman maps, Erdogan has been pushing this narrative for over 20 years that he wants to reestablish the Ottoman Empire. Okay, well, he's working on Greece. He's got Turkey here. Syria's basically been absorbed. He's up here in Georgia and Azerbaijan and Armenia and this area up in here, and so that's a problem. He's been affecting Iraq over here because he's bombing this whole northern front up in this area here. And so he's getting ready to go down into Lebanon towards Israel now. Okay. Do you see his plan? He's been talking about this since he became prime minister back in 2002 when he got elected in and started his prime minister position in 2003. So I think we need to understand what Erdogan's potential is here, and God will allow this to happen. As you can see, there's Israel. Guess he might end up there too before he's done. So as Tyre, Lebanon falls around July, then Turkey would drive down through Israel between July and October of 2025 on that first siege of Jerusalem. That's about 3 months. We won't go into detail there. He would end up in Palestine around October for the Battle of Gaza. That is actually against the Egyptians. So the Egyptians would come up here and meet Turkey. They would have the Battle of Gaza. Egypt totally disintegrates, and then Turkey walks in basically as a liberator in general. Once that occurs, this is October of 2025, Erdogan would then bring his armies back up to Tyre and then drive straight over to Erbil for the Battle of Gaugamela. Once that battle completes around October, because it won't take him any time to get over there, he owns everything, it's not that far a distance, and he already has all this softened up in the northern front anyway. The Kurds are not going to be in very good condition. They would collapse down towards Baghdad and then down into Shush, Iran in the battle, or in the province of Elam here. And then once the Kurds or Medes align with Iran, Persia, they would collapse, be destroyed by Turkey, because Turkey would come down here and smash both these nations. Once Iran is absorbed, that then would start the completion of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And what I mean by that is, once Iran falls as a nation, Daniel 8's completed. But Ezekiel 38 and 39 are still going on here, because 10 nations then would come back all the way over to Israel for that siege by around March of 2026, based on the paradigm chart. So that's what I mean. There's a lot going on here in the step 2. Turkey controlled armies are controlling Syria. And they're down there right now parlaying, trying to figure out how they're going to keep that control and how they're pushing the Russians, the Kurds, and everybody else out. Probably the United States here, as Trump's looking at our 2,000 guys going, do I really want to leave them over there if Turkey's got this under control? But that's going to be a problem when Turkey enters Lebanon, because they're a NATO nation, and that's a game changer, because no one's going to expect that one to happen. Erdogan's already started establishing new bases in Syria, and he's going to stay there and stabilize the areas, mainly against the Kurds. And we talked about that Ottoman expansion. Okay. Israel and Hezbollah, that ceasefire just ended on January 26th. So now you have this massive occupation of Israel into southern Lebanon, the Golan Heights, West Bank areas. In my opinion, the expansion of both Israel in Lebanon and the expansion of Turkey and its proxies into Syria, as well as Turkey setting up new bases deeper into Syria, is going to cause Israel all kinds of problems, and you're going to see Israel and Turkey clash, I believe, as Turkey enters into Lebanon to stop the expansion of the Israeli forces towards the north into Lebanon, because Turkey believes he's expanding for occupational purposes, just as we're watching the similar narrative down in the south, where Turkey and these nations believe that Israel is going to occupy Palestine to try to absorb the land of God, number one. Also eliminate their threat on their southern border down there. And to do that, they're either going to have to completely push Hamas out and bring another government in. Now, if you notice, you've been watching any of the footage out here about these hostages, who's standing around all the Jewish hostages that they're releasing? Hamas. And I've heard reports that Hamas has constituted to almost the strength that they were before the October 7th, 2003 attacks. So it doesn't seem to be working at this point. Turkey, in my opinion, will go down into Syria, as he has. He's literally parlayed with these additional groups, these proxies, just like Iran does. He's using Hamas and Hezbollah. Well, Turkey parlayed with the Free Syrian-backed Turkish groups, as well as the HTS, to take over Syria. And that happened in 12 days, so he's controlling that. I believe that Trump will pull our troops out, just as he did before in 2019. Now, he just got elected in January 20th, 2025. I believe that invasion by Turkey into Lebanon will occur around March. So we've got a gap between now and March to see what Trump's going to do as this heats up over there and it stabilizes enough that Trump may want to pull our troops back to like Saudi Arabia. I believe Erdogan is the white horseman. I've been talking about this. I believe the minute Trump pulls our guys out, he's going to fill that vacuum. We saw this similar thing happen. It's a mirroring of events back in 2019 when Trump pulls our troops on October 6th of 2019 and Erdogan invades on October 9th of 2019 on Yom Kippur. And then remember right after that we saw COVID come out in middle October of this same year, and it was a global pandemic by the first of the year. Hopefully the similar thing won't happen to where we will see Erdogan, which he already has, invaded into Syria, overtaking that, getting ready to go down into Lebanon. If Trump pulls the troops, would we potentially see another global pandemic shortly after that, as we're watching bird flu and all these other things break out in front of us? So we're going to reiterate a few things here. March of 2025, I believe Turkey will invade Lebanon. Between May and June of 2025, we'll have that Battle of Carchemish. So this Battle of Carchemish will force the Kurds even further east than the Euphrates, and it'll force them actually into Iraq, which will then end up forcing them into Erbil, Iraq, which is their regional capital and one of our green zones. At that point, Turkey is going to keep pounding them, but he's not going to concern himself with the Kurds anymore. He's going to end up in Lebanon. In that Battle of Carchemish, those forces will meet up with the other group that came down from Syria for that Battle of Tyre around July. Okay, Tyre, Lebanon falls around July of 2025. And once Tyre falls, then Turkey would enter into Israel and have to go down between Jerusalem and Jordan to Palestine for the Battle of Gaza around October of 2025. Now, this is a massive resistance against Egypt, okay, because Egypt's going to drive up north to Gaza while Turkey comes down, and they're going to meet at the Battle of Gaza. Turkey and Egypt confront each other, and Egypt is pushed back into their own country, and they will have completely collapsed by the time Turkey gets to Egypt. So once Egypt collapses and the Battle of Gaza completes, Turkey will just walk into Egypt. There will be no confrontation going into Egypt because that battle will have already occurred against the Egyptians at the Battle of Gaza. Turkey will be considered a liberator, as Alexander the Great was when he entered Egypt. Then what will happen? Now that Egypt is under the control of Turkey, Turkey leaves a sixth of his armies and moves back to Tyre, Lebanon, and then goes up against the Kurds at Erbil, Iraq for the Battle of Gaugamela. Once the Battle of Gaugamela completes and the Kurds collapse again, the Kurds will then be drove southeast basically to Baghdad, Iraq, and then they will also collapse again to Shush, Iran, where the Kurds and the Medes and the Iranian and Persians will align. But that won't work out well because based on the paradigm and based on Alexander the Great's movement, Turkey will crush both the nations of Iran and the Kurds in the Battle of the Persian Gate around January of 2026. And then that would be the completion of Daniel 8. So at that point, you're moving into the finalization of Ezekiel 38 and 39 because Turkey's been forming these 10 nations for some time. And if you think about it, when you come up to Egypt here and when they collapse, what would happen? We would also see that Cush and Put, which is Sudan and Ethiopia and that area around Egypt, to the west and south will also form into these 10 nations, as Ezekiel 38 and 39 tells us. And so all those 10 nations will be in the room at that point. Iran will have been absorbed into the Turkish nightmare of the 10 nations. And then once Iran falls, all those nations would go from Persia or Iran back against Israel and be destroyed on a sixth seal event in Israel around March 4th of 2026. And if you look at the Paradigm 2030 chart, you'll see that there's a gap of astrological events between February 17th and March 4th, which is a 15-day period of time, which is considered in God's time to ours 1 hour. And he gives these nations 1 hour of power, and then he decimates them on a sixth seal event. That ends up completing Ezekiel 38 and 39, because all 10 nations and Gog are dead. That then breaks a seventh seal event. You have a selection of 144,000 elite elect, and then that takes us into a trumpet phase. You have 4 trumpets literally sound off, devastating a third of the planet. You go into a 5th trumpet, which is a bottomless pit opening. You go into the 6th trumpet. That takes you into the rising of the Antichrist and the false prophet. And then what happens right after that? You see on the 7th trumpet the Lord Jesus come back. And that would happen on the fall feast of September 10th of 2029, based on my paradigm chart. That is the very beginning of the fall feast. He would come back on the first day, drop the 10 days of wrath or awe down on the wicked, and then we would start that marriage phase into the year 2030. Also on that very first day of September 10th of 2029, that starts your calendar year of 2030 on the prophetic calendar, so that would finish your 2,000 year gap between 30 AD and 2030 AD. Now, I'll give you the date stamp now of how many days we have to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th. If you look at the calendar and you count the days from now to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th, there's 1,688 days from today or on Monday. Okay, so that's how much oil I believe you need to have in your lamp to get to the end, to get to rapture. In my opinion, you may not agree with that, but everything that I've read, if you go into Leviticus, you need to be watching those fall feasts, because he completed the spring feast when he came and was crucified and rose, and the Jews believe that he'll come back and fulfill the fall feast. So if you have all these guys out here saying that rapture are going to happen all these crazy times, and they're not around the fall feast, around the Feast of Trumpets, I just don't believe that they have any real credibility, in my opinion. So keep your eye on all these things. So hopefully you've stuck with me this long, and now I'm going to show you a really cool date stamp that verifies a lot of what I've just been talking about. So when you go into Jeremiah 46 verse 2, there's a date stamp. I keep talking about these paradigm date stamps. And look at this. Okay, it's talking about the Battle of Carchemish against the Egyptians. Okay, see, in the past, the Syrians and the Egyptians were in that battle, and then everything's basically disintegrated to where he took everything over, even Egypt. Okay, so we're walking into that same scenario. But look at this. We're talking about Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah. Okay, the 4th year of Jehoiakim, if you've been following my Paradigm 2030 chart, The 4th year of Jehoiakim in this case would be Isaac Herzog, would be 2025. Because Isaac Herzog was brought in July of 2021. So his 4th year would be 2025. So it's interesting that when you bring up the Battle of Carchemish, that it brings up Jeremiah 46 verse 2, because it is the 4th year of this king. Okay, this is extremely important that we understand that the Bible is following history. The reason this is important here is because when you go to Jeremiah 46 verse 2, Jehoiakim reflects Isaac Herzog of today. He mirrors him exactly in the position and the time that he was in that position. So when you go to the Battle of Carchemish and you actually look at when it happens, and then we actually go look at the date when you can actually pinpoint it down, because this one's not an easy date to find. It happens around May or June. So I'm speculating as Turkey's coming down from Turkey into Syria with a full armor unit into Lebanon, we're going to see a breakout around May or June in the Battle of Carchemish up around the Euphrates River that will also form against the Kurds, pushing them to the east, and then they'll drive down to help that first armor group heading towards Tyre. They'll line up together and then they'll push together towards Tyre and take Tyre out by July of 2025, based on the history in the past of both Alexander the Great and Nebuchadnezzar the Babylonian. So keep your eye on that. This is possibly how these movements are going to occur. It seems to be mirroring exactly what's happened before. And if you think about it, if you go to where we are right now, Darius the Mede, which was the original force that attacked Turkey before they came down into Syria, has been already moved all the way to the Euphrates. They're not over there anymore. They're not going to be a major factor. So that first siege or that first battle has occurred. Now Turkey's getting ready to go down into Syria, into Lebanon, because he doesn't have that other threat. The Kurds are gone, Iran's gone, Russia's gone. He has no one stopping us except 2,000 Americans, which are going to be pushed out soon. So God bless everybody. Keep your eye on this. This is fast moving. I've got some other connections. I want to get into a major video on Darius the Mede and how his 4 years are going to play into the next 4 years, since he just got elected in October 20th of 2024. He's going to be a major factor as we get into this. This new leader of the Kurds was really going to play a major factor into the prophecy, because he gives us these date stamps about the Kurdish leader, or the leader of the Kurds, or the Medes. So we need to understand these date stamps and what they can show us. So be safe out there. Find the Lord Jesus, get your oil in your lamp, and let your people know what's going on. And God bless. Have a great night.